break, so we're going to give it another 60 seconds or so, and then the webinar will begin. Thanks to all of you for joining us. Hi, everybody. We're going to get started now. This is Bob Kernan from Jacapps. Welcome to our client webinar with Nielsen. Today you're going to hear about Nielsen's new mobile SDK. We're very happy to announce that our V4 platform was recently certified for the SDK. What this means is that finally you're going to be able to get full value for your mobile listening. And this is a real game changer, we believe, for radio ratings and monetization. Our clients who are on the V4 app will be able to get this as part of their apps. If you're not on V4, please reach out to us to learn more because our new V4 platform also has a ton of other great features that drive engagement and new listening occasions. So we look forward to hearing from you about that. If you have questions, please enter them into the text box during the webinar, and we will try to take some questions at the end of the presentation. Right now, here from Nielsen, is Jen Williams to tell you about this new SDK and how it will begin to measure your listening on the mobile platform.
Great. Thank you very much for the introduction. First of all, and welcome everybody. Thank you as well for being here. I want to say, as part of the introduction to this, that the folks at Jacapps have been great partners of ours getting the SDK installed on mobile devices. They've been a great partner to us, have been working very closely with us for the last several months. So hats off to them. My team has been very, very happy with all of that. So today I'm the product lead for the digital audio measurement service. Some of you may have heard inklings along the way, but this presentation really, more than anything else, is intended to give you some further insight into that. So if we could go to the next slide. Today's agenda, I'm going to be providing an introduction to the digital audio measurement service. I will be providing kind of a top-line look at the core components, and I do indeed promise up front this will not be at all technical in nature. More than anything else, I want you to walk away from this webinar feeling like you have a good grasp of the SDK and how the process works, and not necessarily need to know how to code, for example, a mobile device or an application in order to do that. We are, as some of you may have heard, in what I would call preview launch in the service. So what I thought I'd do is just very briefly walk through some of the data deliverables you might expect to see should you take part in it with us at this point. And then I'll talk about what's next. And in some ways, it's what's next, bigger picture future as it relates to the service overall and what you might see happening in 2015. So this is the introduction to the digital audio measurement service. It is, from a measurement philosophy standpoint, while it's broad and it seems simple, our goal, more than really anything else, is to provide what I think we would all agree is necessary today in the marketplace, particularly the audio marketplace, and that is to provide a comprehensive view of how audio is consumed. And as part of that, and again, in an effort to level the playing field and make the marketplace as egalitarian as possible, account for the unique characteristics and varieties of digital audio products. So these are the priorities. The first priority is to provide a full view of consumption. In an effort to control the chaos, as it were, as with everything else, we start big and we start defining the various components. So the way we are, at least initially today, looking at the two buckets, we could call them, the things that we're trying to measure in this service. Content is one side, a very important side of the coin, and the other side of the coin is advertising. On the content side, if we drill down a little bit more, these are the ways, at least today, as we look out into the digital audio marketplace, these are the types of content we see out there. Station streams, I'm sure near and dear to your hearts, go without saying. Digital stations, you'll also hear them referred to as e-radio stations. They are, in many ways, very similar to a radio station in that they are being programmed, they're linear, they just don't necessarily happen to have an over-the-air counterpart. On-demand content, you can read that to mean podcasting. Customized audio, which is more a model where a radio station is created or a lineup is created for each individual listener. And then self-select audio, you can read that to mean more of an online iPod. A lineup is being created from a pre-existing inventory of content. And these are the two that we, as here again, is probably not coming as a surprise at all. These are the two pieces of real estate that we're focusing on in our initial phase, station streams and digital stations. And then advertising. It's important to us, as it is for you guys, to make sure that we are correctly and strategically identifying not only your content and your real estate, but also the advertising models that go into those things. So our service is going to be built to measure simulcasted streams, read that to mean TLR, non-simulcasted streams, linear, and then, of course, dynamic as well in case there are targeted ads happening in the streams, things of that nature. So that the service is also built to capture that. The second priority we have is to provide a full view of consumption. Now, it does not come as any surprise to any of us, I'm sure, that one of the advantages of digital these days is that you are able to distribute your content on a multitude of platforms and therefore reach a multitude of consumers. So the first platform is mobile. The second would be web. And the third we refer to sometimes as aggregation platforms. These are companies, for example, like TuneIn, where you might send your stream just for an additional distribution outlet. So these are by no means all they will ever be, but at least to start in our introductory phase, our SDK will be bringing in listening data from mobile, from web, and we are, as I said, working with distribution platforms to make that happen as well. And really, at the end of the day, our goal is to measure your content. We want to make sure that we are capturing your entire audience. And at the end of all of these things, really, the golden egg, so to speak, is to provide you with an aggregated audience estimate that really brings in the various outlets that where your listening might be occurring. Enhanced demographics. I love to talk about this because I think not only is it certainly exciting for us to be able to say that we can do this, but it's something I think we would all agree is very important to you, particularly, so you can not only gauge the demographic performance of your content, but also use this to leverage selling. So at least initially today we are, and I'm actually already seeing preview data, it's very exciting, that provides an age and a gender assignment to your digital audience. And this is a very top-line process look at the way we do the assignments. It obviously, as with everything, starts with the listening session on the left. We, using our app, which we'll talk about in a minute, retrieve the listening activity. We match it to a data provider with whom we have a relationship now. We bring, once that matching has been done, we bring those data points, those aggregated demographic data points back, calibrate them using proprietary Nielsen adjustment factors and things of that nature. And then, of course, obviously, this is all with an eye to crediting and reporting. And last but not least, certainly not least, is making all of this, frankly, is in an effort to make audio easier to buy. So from the ground up, we have the 4 priorities we talked about, but from the ground up, I've built the digital audio service to align wherever appropriate and however possible with the existing buying and selling tools. So as it relates to the data, as it relates to the reports, things like that, we have aligned with the world you're already very familiar with, the radio broadcast world. So metro geography and survey dates are already in alignment with radio, which means we are doing survey-based and local market-based reporting. We are planning, as part of launch, to deliver these data to transactional systems. We are also, probably not surprisingly, going to make these available to Nielsen Audio software platforms. You can read that to mean TapScan, for those of you who are familiar with that. We are, here again, not unlike the earlier reference to TLR, this service will also combine your over-the-air number with your digital simulcast stream. And the service is really, more than anything else, as I mentioned before, built to be as flexible as possible. So if you have non-simulcast content, if you have digital content, the service can provide appropriate estimates for both, and that also aligns with the buying and selling tools. And then, of course, I'll mention it again, traditional demographics obviously will be part of this. So the breaks today are not custom, although we do have plans in the future to be able to provide custom day part and demo breaks, particularly in TapScan. So the core components. I did promise before, and I will keep to my promise, that this will not be at all technical in nature. More than anything else, it's an examination of the flow, just here again, so you can leave this feeling like you have a good kind of top-line bird's-eye view understanding of how the SDK works. So the Nielsen Software Development Kit, and by the way, if you didn't already know that, that's what SDK stands for. It is the core technical component of our digital audio measurement service. In a way, hearkening to broadcast radio, it's a meter, for lack of a better description. It's a single solution that we can install across platform. It is capable of providing measurement for the station types that I mentioned earlier, station streams obviously being in the first phase. And from a Nielsen corporate standpoint, what I think is really good for us and what's important to us is that it's an agnostic software development kit that can be used for television and audio. It can and does for other products measure on the program level. It's capable of measuring and providing commercial ratings. And as I mentioned before, it can provide linear and dynamic ad loads. And this is a very bird's eye view of the process. The Nielsen SDK, or Software Development Kit, gets quote unquote installed on the app. It collects a variety of data, most of which are related to your station. Nielsen retrieves the data and calibrates it, obviously with the demographic piece added in, and then the estimates are reported. And this is just a very kind of small grouped look at the categories of data that we bring in. We obviously want to identify the station or the content. Part of our SDK functionality is to make sure we timestamp. That allows us later to provide aggregated day part breaks, demo breaks I've already talked about. Duration, think of that as session length, things of that nature, consumption, and of course metro crediting. So we have a multitude of estimates that are going to be available, but these are the big 4 categories, I think, so to speak. So reach, which is important to all of us, obviously. The number of people, unique audience, and CUME, for example, will fall into this category. The number of sessions, session starts, or the number of quarter hours. Demographics, age and gender, also broken out by day part. Duration, which would be 2 examples anyway, which would be time spent listening and total listening hours. And then location, we will launch, as I mentioned before, with local market radio metro assignments with an eye to possibly broadening that geography down the line and adding a DMA to the mix. So these are the preview data deliverables I mentioned before. I just wanted to give everybody a quick look, as I said, what you could be receiving should you take part in the pilot. And these data deliverables are indeed being sent out to some folks now. This is the kind of simple process, the ramp up to preview. Your station SDK gets quote-unquote deployed. You can read that to mean live to the consumer. The Nielsen data team, my data team, will do end-to-end testing to make sure a number of things are happening, including the station crediting is correct, the metro crediting is correct, all of that good stuff. And then after that sort of middle phase of making sure everything is working and doing end-to-end testing, we will begin plans for preview data delivery. So there are Excel documents. Obviously, I mentioned earlier that at launch, you'll be able to access the data through TapScan, but right now there'll be Excel documents. They provide station-level estimates for only your stations, and only you will see that, by the way. The 48 ppm metro areas are the first set of markets that we will look at, not the last under any circumstances. You will indeed see day part and demo breaks as part of these preview reports. And this is a screen grab, actually, of a real preview report. This is the broadcast preview report, for lack of a better description. This is where your over-the-air stations and your simulcasted streams would appear. And this is what we refer to, at least loosely, as the digital preview report. Should you have a non-simulcasted stream, should you be interested, for example, in seeing how your streams are performing out of market, should you have digital content, this report is built to give you those estimates. And in a lot of ways, these are more what I would call impression-based. So unique audience, average minute impressions, TSL, TLH, things of that nature. So what's next? What is going to come up in 2015? We have a number of things in store. This is actually a short list to give you an idea of where we're going to be focusing our efforts in 2015. We are obviously absolutely committed to continuing with client onboarding, obviously. Our market launch, I feel fairly confident that you will be hearing greater detail about when we're going to market with this thing, probably in the next 3 or 4 weeks. Data will be made available, as I mentioned, in TapScan and to transactional systems. And then development will obviously and always continue. We're hoping to at least begin early look at adding on-demand to the mix and customized audio, which I talked about before.
Jennifer, thank you. This is
Sure.
Paul Jacapps from Jacapps and Jacapps Media. We asked for questions at the beginning, and not surprisingly, we've gotten a few. So let me share these with you. And again, if you have a question, feel free to type them in the box, and we'll try to get to them. This is from a radio station where they have a terrestrial radio station, but their app is its own standalone station. So obviously a separate stream. Will you be able to measure that?
Absolutely, and I'm glad you used a real-world example of that. That is a classic example of what I was mentioning earlier, which is what we kind of loosely refer to as e-radio or digital stations. There should not be, and I think we've spec'd out the service to do this exact thing. There really should not be a configuration of content that you put out to your consumers that we can't measure. It's just more than anything, it's a question of when. So if you have what I would call an e-radio station being made available to your digital consumers, that actually falls in phase 1. We would be including that in all the releases, all the early releases that I talked about as early as this year. So yes.
Okay. We've had several questions. about will this work outside of the United States, like in Latin America or Canada, or is it U.S.-based only?
That is also a very good question. The easy answer is yes. It will indeed work outside of the continental U.S. For launch purposes, we are focusing on the U.S. However, and this is in many ways due to the fact that we, as I mentioned, are using a software development kit that was created for other products within Nielsen. It can, for all intents and purposes, be used anywhere. So our international quote-unquote rollout plan is in existence. We're simply focusing today on the U.S., but absolutely we can go international.
Another question, with the demographic breakouts, will you be breaking out by ethnic groups, ethnic listening?
Yes, that is a huge priority for us, a huge priority for us. We are actually, the way we've separated the steps, I would call them, is the current data provider that we use is able today to give us age and gender. We are on an active search and have been and will continue to be for a data provider that can provide ethnic information for us to be able to overlay that. So it's absolutely on the roadmap. I think our getting out of the gate with age and gender was important to us. We wanted to be able to provide what I would call the buying and selling fundamental piece of age and gender, but yes, that's absolutely on the roadmap.
Okay. And for the person who asked that question, if you know of a provider, send them along to Nielsen.
Yes,
and,
by all means,
they will be happy to contact them. Here's one that obviously came from a very aggressive broadcaster. How do we get into the front of the line to participate in the SDK test in our market?
Well, I have a lot of answers to that, but I think in fairness, I actually didn't go into the structure of the departments and things of that nature on the Nielsen side, but I feel fairly confident saying there isn't necessarily a front of the line. I think as I started this presentation saying the folks at Jacapps have been great partners of ours. I think getting iOS, as was mentioned before, installed and certified was a giant step. So now the beauty of this is that flipping the switch, for lack of a better phrase, will have to occur for each station now, but the heavy lifting has already been done by Jacapps on your behalf. So I think we just need to figure out, frankly, the station rollout at this point.
No, I appreciate that because I was, as a salesman by trade, I was going to say that, Alex and Bob are here waiting for your phone call. But let me just go to a touch of detail on that. Our approval with Nielsen is for our V4 platform. So it isn't for a particular app. So our ability to move quickly with apps that are on the V4 platform, as long as you're a Nielsen client, should go pretty well. One final question. It's actually a question that I have, and then I'll hand this over to Bob to finish up. So, clients are going to be calling us asking questions about Nielsen process, and that is not our role. Who should they contact, to get the ball rolling on their end while concurrently working with us to get their app going?
I think that's a really good question, actually. My recommendation, all things being equal, is I would recommend you contact your current Nielsen representative, the person that you would contact for really anything around Nielsen, questions about over-the-air data, anything like that. I would simply reach out to them. And the likelihood is, not that I'm overly popular, but the likelihood is that person will know with whom to circle back, and you will likely end up with me. But I just think from a single point of contact standpoint, I would definitely recommend contacting the person that you deal with on a daily basis.
Great. Thank you so much, Jen.
Sure.
If you have further questions or you want to know more about V4, just reach out to Alex or myself. The contact info is on the screen right now. Thank you all for coming, and we look forward to talking to you soon.